Here is a number that should stop you in your tracks. On the 2026 World Cup, people around the world bet an estimated $240 billion. $240 billion, almost double the amount gambled on the previous World Cup in Qatar. This was, by a distance, the most bet-on football tournament in the history of the human race. And when it was over, FIFA, the body that runs the whole thing, stood up and declared it clean. No suspicious betting, no sign of manipulation, not in a single one of the 104 matches. Case closed. Except, a few days later, an independent international watchdog looked at the exact same tournament and said something very different. It said it had flagged 7 matches. 7. And then, there was the small matter of a sitting president of the United States personally getting a red card overturned. So, which is it? The cleanest World Cup ever played, or one we can no longer fully trust? Today we look at the evidence carefully, because in this story, a red flag is not the same thing as a crime. Let's get into it. First, you have to understand why all that gambling money matters so much. $240 billion is not just a big number. It is a target. Because wherever that much money is being wagered on a result, there is a powerful, tempting incentive for someone, somewhere, to try to make sure that result goes a certain way. This is the uncomfortable engine underneath modern football. The bigger the betting market gets, the more a fixed match is worth, and the 2026 World Cup betting market was the biggest the sport has ever seen. So when questions get raised about this tournament, they are not coming out of nowhere. They are coming from the simple, cold logic of that enormous pile of money. So let's start with FIFA's side of the story, because it is important to be fair to them. During and after the tournament, FIFA's own integrity task force monitored the matches, and its conclusion was clear and confident. It stated that it had found no suspicious betting activity and no indications of match manipulation in any game across the entire World Cup. As far as football's governing body was concerned, the most watched, most wagered tournament in history had passed the test. The game, they said, was clean, and it is entirely possible that they are completely right. But then came the pushback, and it came from a body specifically built to catch exactly this kind of thing. It is called the Group of Copenhagen, an international network that operates under the Council of Europe's Macolin Convention, the main international treaty designed to fight the manipulation of sports. These are not conspiracy theorists on the internet. This is a serious, official, cross-border monitoring organization. And after analyzing all 104 matches of the World Cup, they did not agree with FIFA's all clear. Instead, they issued 7 so-called yellow notices, formal alerts, flagging betting patterns and other indicators that, in their view, warranted further investigation. 7 flags against FIFA's 0. 2 official bodies, looking at the same tournament, arriving at opposite conclusions. Now, this is the single most important thing I can tell you in this entire video, so please hold on to it. A yellow notice is not a verdict. It is not proof that a match was fixed. It does not mean any player, referee, or team did anything wrong. What it means is that the betting behavior around a game looked unusual enough to deserve a closer look. And unusual betting can have perfectly innocent explanations. A flood of money on a heavily favored team, a well-known injury, sharp gamblers reacting faster than the market. The vast majority of these flags, historically, lead to nothing at all. So as we go through what was reportedly looked at, keep that firmly in mind. These are questions, not accusations. And it is worth remembering why bodies like this exist in the first place. Match fixing is not some paranoid fantasy. It is one of the oldest and most persistent threats the sport has. Entire leagues have been brought to their knees by it. Clubs relegated, titles erased, presidents and referees sent to prison. We have covered some of those stories on this channel, and they are staggering. So when a serious international monitor says 7 games are worth a second look, it has earned the right to be taken seriously, not as a verdict, but as a warning from people whose entire job is to spot corruption before it can be proven. With that said, what was actually flagged? According to reports, the incidents that drew scrutiny included a red card shown to a South African midfielder in the very opening match of the tournament, a goalless draw between Spain and Cape Verde, and a disallowed goal by Spain's Ferran Torres in the game against Saudi Arabia. On their own, every one of these is the kind of thing that happens in football all the time: a harsh red card, a boring 0-0, a tight offside call. Nothing about any single one of them, by itself, proves a thing. The watchdog's point was narrower and more technical, that the betting around these specific moments showed patterns worth examining. Whether those patterns mean anything at all is exactly what an investigation is for. And so far, no match at this World Cup has been proven to be fixed, and no one has been charged with fixing one. But there was one case that got far more attention than the rest, and once you hear the timeline, you will understand why. It involves the United States forward Folarin Balogun. During the group stage, Balogun was sent off, and on the very same day as his red card, a bet appeared on the prediction platform Polymarket, a wager specifically about whether Balogun would play in the United States' next match. Think about the oddness of that. A red card normally means an automatic suspension. The player should be out of the next game, and yet money was moving on the possibility that he would somehow be available. And then, he was, because FIFA overturned his suspension. And it is worth pausing on where that bet even lived. Polymarket is one of a new generation of online prediction markets, where people wager on the outcome of almost anything: elections, awards, and increasingly, the fine details of sporting events. These markets are fast, global, and far less tightly policed than a traditional bookmaker. They have become a strange new frontier for football gambling, where you can bet not just on who wins, but on whether a specific suspended player will somehow take the field. And when money starts moving on an outcome that by the rulebook should be impossible, you can understand why a monitor's eyebrows go up. It might be nothing at all, just gamblers gambling, but it is exactly the kind of pattern these watchdogs are built to notice. Now, here is where two completely different stories collide, and it is crucial to separate them. The reason Balogun's ban was overturned had, officially, nothing to do with betting at all. It was overturned because the President of the United States, Donald Trump, personally telephoned the President of FIFA, Gianni Infantino, and asked for the red card to be reviewed. And FIFA did exactly that. It suspended the ban and cleared Balogun to play. It was the first time a red card suspension had been reversed at a World Cup in over 60 years. The reaction was furious and immediate. Belgium's Football Association, European football's governing body, former FIFA officials, and a long list of ex-players all lined up to condemn it, arguing that overturning a punishment after a direct phone call from a head of state made a mockery of the idea that the rules apply equally to everyone. For the record, it did not even work out on the pitch. The United States went out and lost to Belgium 4-1 anyway. But the damage to the principle was done. On the biggest stage in the sport, the rules had visibly bent under political pressure. And the precedent is the truly dangerous part. Because if a punishment can be reversed by a phone call from a powerful enough person this time, then every controversial decision at every future tournament now carries a quiet, corrosive question. Was that call made on its merits, or because someone important picked up the phone? Once that door is open, it is very hard to close again. And that is what makes this whole chapter so uncomfortable. When you put the pieces side by side, you have a record ocean of gambling money. You have an independent watchdog raising 7 separate flags. You have a strange bet on a suspended player who then, improbably, became unsuspended. And you have naked political interference from one of the most powerful men on Earth. Not one of those things, on its own, proves that anything was rigged, but together, they paint a picture of a tournament where the line between the game and the forces swirling around it, money, politics, power, got blurrier than it has ever been. So step back and ask the real question this whole story is built on. Who do you actually trust here? Because there is an awkward structural problem at the heart of it. FIFA is the organization that runs the World Cup, that sells its television and sponsorship rights for billions, and that also, through its own task force, polices the integrity of its own tournament and declares it clean. It is judge, player, and referee all at once. The Group of Copenhagen, on the other hand, is independent, but its flags are only flags, early warnings that may lead nowhere. So you are left with a genuine dilemma. Do you take the word of the body with every financial reason to say everything is fine, or the watchdog with no skin in the game, but no proof either? On a tournament with $240 billion riding on it, just trust us is an enormous thing to ask. Let me be as clear and as fair as I possibly can, one final time before we finish. Nobody has proven that a single match at the 2026 World Cup was fixed. FIFA may well be right that it was clean. The 7 flags may all melt away into innocent explanations. The Balogun bet may be a coincidence. The Trump phone call, as damaging as it was to the sport's credibility, is a scandal about political interference, not about match fixing. Every one of these threads may lead nowhere. But here is the thought I want to leave you with. This was the tournament with the most advanced technology ever. A chip in the ball, cameras tracking every limb. It was watched by the most people and gambled on with the most money in human history. And even with all of that scrutiny, it still ended not with total confidence, but with a question mark. 7 flags, 1 presidential phone call, and a quiet, nagging doubt. So I will hand the final verdict to you. Was the 2026 World Cup the cleanest ever? Or just the one where we can trust it the least? Tell me honestly, down in the comments. And subscribe because there's a new story every week.